This episode of the Golden Triangle Signal is brought to you by HB Neild and Sons. Contractors and construction managers, commercial, institutional, industrial. HB Neild and Sons Construction was formed in 1932 in Beaumont, Texas. The founder, HB Neild, was an immigrant from Liverpool who came to America with drive, tenacity, and vision. What started as a family business became an enduring legacy of excellence in large-scale commercial and industrial construction. HB Neild and Sons Incorporated grew in size and expanded in service areas over the decades. The business itself has grown into a multi-generational company with each of the four generations participating since the founding, all contributing together to HB Neild's vision of quality work and honest business dealings. The company is a product of hard work, tireless effort, and time-honored commitment by generations of employees and their families who share the Neild family's belief that every project must be of the highest quality and view every building constructed as a small portion of their heritage. Today, HB Neild is active throughout multiple segments of the construction industry all along the Gulf Coast, specializing in industrial construction and large-scale commercial and institutional construction projects. Industry-leading petrochemical clients turn to HB Neild for their extensive experience in heavy-duty, highly skilled construction within plants and refineries for blast-resistant structures, laboratories, control buildings, and administration buildings, while the commercial clients trust their experience and skill for their municipal buildings, their schools, churches, retail buildings, and other commercial structures. They build every project with the same values and principles that support the number one original promise from the founder of quality. So once again, we want to thank HB Neild and Sons Incorporated for sponsoring this podcast, the Golden Triangle Signal, and for assisting us and helping us achieve our dreams as we do whatever we can to do our part to help you also achieve your dreams.
3, 2, 1, and we're going live again. Podcasting, son. Hello, James.
Hello, Mr. Maxwell.
Mr. Maxwell.
So what are we going to talk about today, Stephen?
Man, so it looks like on the schedule for today's we got we're talking field environment skills, hard skills, soft skills, and
this is centered. This is talking about mainly talking about from the refinery aspect and the oil field aspect, kind of what we've seen as far as oil and gas environment.
definitely a heavily industrial.
That's good. Yeah, industrial.
Yeah,
That's
definitely
what I was
a
gonna-
heavily industrial bias. Let's
Yes.
say yeah, there you
Construction
go.
environments.
Construction environment, but this is heavily biased towards the industrial environment.
Yes. So what you have on your list for us to talk about today?
So, we probably ought to start with is hard skills.
Which is our specific technical knowledge.
Yeah, and these are things that does everybody need to know this? Does everybody have to know this? Eventually, yes. But what we're trying to what we're trying to help everybody out with, what we're trying to communicate is that if you'll get this, if you'll get it ahead of the curve, learn some of this stuff, bring this to the table when you come to the job site, you can separate yourself from the rest of the workforce.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and there's a few of these topics that, there was some experiences that we had back working when we were doing a bunch of work in Galveston, to where you and Rydell got a lot more theory because of some of the classes y'all were able to take advantage of,
Yeah.
I wasn't.
We can talk about some of that.
So it's not just the application, it's not just going to work every day, but it's also how can you excel and learn and just talent stacking is how it's commonly referred to. Talent stacking.
Okay.
That
Alright.
way you can become more resourceful and more valuable to the company you're working for. So
Well, let me back up a little bit and let me make this clarification to anybody that's listening and specify that hard lesson to learn, okay? And a lesson that we're trying to get across to everybody, especially young people, especially to any young person that might be listening to this. The a hard lesson to learn that I've learned the hard way. I think you might share this sentiment, but just showing up to work every day on time, reliably, isn't enough
no.
in today's environment. It's not enough. There's too much going on. There's too much information out there to absorb. There's too much technology. The job environment, especially in the industrial environment, there's just too much going on. And so what we're trying to do is list out some things that you really need to be thinking about, because everybody thinks and everybody's told, well, just, 80% is just showing up. And it's like, no, that's bullshit. Like, showing up on time every day consistently is really, really important. But if you don't show up and apply yourself, then you're going to miss out.
Right. And you got to get people to show up first. I mean, that's why, showing up is once we get down the line here into the soft skills, that's part of one of our soft skills is showing up and being dependable. Because I mean, you can't excel in these other areas if you don't show up to start with.
Right.
But after you show up,
Well,
you do need to set yourself apart.
Well, that brings up a good point. So, all right. So why don't we start with soft skills then, and then go into the hard skills. Let's start with soft skills, and then we'll blend into the hard skills, because that's a good point, because the last point on the list of soft skills would blend right into the hard skills. So maybe I was looking at that backwards. So looking at the soft skills and specifically what we're talking about in soft skills are they're not
They're more your personality traits.
Yeah, there you go. They're traits. Yeah. Help me out here. They're traits, they're personality traits. They're things that you're going to lean on in your personality, your dependability, your character, not necessarily things that you can go out and get as far as your knowledge, your craft knowledge, the theory behind whatever craft you're in.
As we get into the hard skills, these things take more time to develop these skills. The soft skills, these personality traits, these are the type of skills that you can roll out immediately, day one, and start using these things and start implementing this. I mean, you could have it in a checklist. You could have it on a little a note card in your pocket. You could take a note card. You could write these down. You could laminate it. You could have it in your pocket. So these soft skills are things that you can implement immediately, and immediately start exercising them on the job site, and will immediately help start propelling you forward.
So I'm going to take that and I'm going to make a statement right there. So here, something to think about is we're going into soft skills. Soft skills, like you said, they're personality traits, character traits, okay? And what people, especially young people, need to understand is that you don't have a set personality. You don't have a set character, okay? Your character is something that you're constantly developing. Right?
Yeah.
Your personality is something that you're constantly developing. And sure, there's traits of that are very heavily influenced on how you look at life, but you can build your personality, you can build your character, and you should build your character and build your personality throughout your life. If you ever stop doing that, you're dead.
Yeah,
Right?
you should
So
always be trying to be
that's
a better person or be a more improved or more evolved person every day, more evolved than you were yesterday. Even if I mean you're not talking about you don't have to be leaps and bounds, you know, but if you can just a modicum of improvement
every day.
every day after I mean it's 365 days in a year on average.
That's 365 steps that you
That's
can
right.
take.
They can be small steps, but if you take 365 small steps and add them together in 1 year, then that's a lot of progress, and that's a lot more progress than you will see from others around you. So
Yeah.
you don't have to make huge leaps and bounds every day. Just try to make a little bit of progress. Just a little
baby
bit of progress.
steps.
Baby steps at a long.
And that leads right into the soft skills that the list of soft skills that we've dedicated to talking about today and on this episode. And but also, so to kind of piggyback onto that, so one thing to remember is that your character is something that constantly improves. Don't just stop. Don't think that it's ever done. Your personality is something you can constantly progress and improve. Don't ever think you can just stop. That's it. And when you go to the job site, like you said, setting up a list of tasks or something. Here's a pet peeve of mine. When you show up to the job site, no matter who you are, superintendent, no matter if you're the most senior superintendent, most senior project manager, or you're the most junior helper, junior apprentice, first day in the job, doesn't matter. The most important thing that you can do, show up with a pen in your pocket and a notepad in your pocket. And it can be it can be a free pen that you picked up off of somebody. It could be uh, a 99-cent notepad that you got at the dollar store. It doesn't matter. You have to have something, some sort of utensil that you can take notes on and take notes with. And one of the biggest pet peeves of mine is showing up on a job site and getting ready to sign a permit or sign some safety paperwork or sign a schedule or sign a damn check to get paid, and the dude doesn't have a pen with him.
Right.
And I'm like, you're a journeyman level worker in your field, in your craft, and you don't have a pen. Like you can't sign anything. You can't take notes. It's like calling somebody on the phone. We'll talk about the office environment later, but it's like calling somebody on the phone and you say, "Hey man, take my number down so you can call me back and give me this information." And they say, "Well, hold on a minute. Let me go find a pen." You mean to tell me you're answering the phone in your office and you don't have a pen in your hand and you don't have a pad of paper there ready to make notes on? Like, come on, man, get on the ball, So anyway, that's a pet peeve. I mean, I'm getting passionate about it
Well,
already, but it's a pet
and
peeve of mine.
but
It's like,
let's talk about it from the perspective of application. Okay, so you talked about it being a pet peeve, and it is very important. And I think we talked about this during the professionalism episode. We were talking about the importance of taking notes and keeping a daily log and understanding what tasks you're doing and stuff like that. So, and you can go as cheap or as expensive as you want to or you are able.
right?
So you can spend $30 on a tally book, a nice tally book, one of those the nice ones that you can find online, and you could spend $50 or $60 on a nice pen, nice stainless steel pen. But you don't have to.
No.
You can pick up a pack of notepads from the dollar store or from the Office Depot or the office supply store or Walmart
You,
for less than $5 and a pack of pens single use, or not single use, but disposable pens. I mean, you don't refill them. You can pick up all that would last you 2 months for less than $5.
$5. $5. You can go down to your bank, okay, or your credit union or whatever your financial institution is. You can go down to your financial institution and get a pen from them for free.
That's true.
Hell, you can get a pad of paper from them for free. So a notepad. So anyway, bottom line is don't show up to the job site without a pen to write on.
Be prepared.
And look, funny thing about that is like any cowboy, you go look at any rancher or cowboy, and they got a pen in their pocket. They got a little disposable pen in their pocket, and you go any landscaper, go jump in his truck and look, he's got a handful of pens sitting in the console, or they're hanging from the dashboard, they're hanging from the visor above the dashboard. You gotta have something to write with. You gotta have a way to take notes. You gotta have a way to sign the documents that you're working with. In the industrial environment, we have documents that we sign every day, and it's so unprofessional to show up to the work site and not be able to sign the documents that you're gonna have to sign. So just that, I mean, I don't know. I'm still harping on this, but I'm just saying, like, it chaps me up to show up on a job and a journeyman level worker doesn't have a pen, he can't write, he can't sign the permit, or he can't take notes on what the job is. Like, what are we supposed to do with that?
And
you know?
it's not just about journeyman level people. I mean, in all honesty, if you really take a step back, it doesn't matter what level you are. It doesn't matter if you're a helper, and it doesn't matter if you're the CEO. You're going to work, which means when you're on site for those hours, you're there to do a job. You should be trying to do the best job that you can. You should be trying to take responsibility and be proactive for the things that you can control and that you have an influence over. And you should be moving forward as much as possible all the time. So you need to have the tools at your disposal in your toolkit. Whether if you're a guy in the field, your pen is in your shirt, in the pen slot of your work shirt.
Part of your toolbox.
It's just as important, if not more important, than the screwdrivers in your tool bag.
Yeah.
And that also goes back to one of the reasons why, when we were talking about in our professionalism episode, why it's so important to dress properly for the job site with proper attire, or proper attire for the job that you're working. Because if you pick the right clothing too, then it gives you the ability, you get the proper shirts. You're not going to have pockets on the front of your t-shirt with a pin slot in it, more than likely. But if you're wearing a lightweight work shirt or a button-up work shirt, 99 times out of 100, you're going to have pockets that are suitable for having a notepad in your pocket, and you're going to have slots for your pens or your pencils.
Yeah.
So, being prepared, picking the right tools. Your clothing is a tool to be utilized, whether you're a CEO wearing a suit or you're a helper wearing jeans and a button-up work shirt. Your tools, your clothing, your pen, your briefcase, your toolbox, whatever the case may be, those are all resources. Those are all tools to be utilized, all things to help you do your job more efficiently, more effectively, and to take more control and bring more value to the table for your clients and for your company that you're working for.
Yeah, and it's just a little soapbox that I'm, kind of partial to, but it's one of them deals. It doesn't matter if you're say a journeyman level or craftsman level, like you better have that down. And if you're out there, you're an apprentice or you're a helper out there trying to separate yourself from the crowd, trying to progress, that's a dang good place to start.
Absolutely. And it's an
You
easy
know,
place to start.
easy.
We're
Oh
not
yeah,
talking
easy
about something
place.
that's difficult. We're talking about easy things to do that have maximum impact.
All right, so starting on the soft skills list from the bottom to the top, we're gonna start with and so let's clarify something real quick. This ought to be common sense.
And these
Unfortunately, from our experience, it's not always common sense. Okay, these are things that ought to just be people, okay, helpers, apprentices, entry level guys, okay, they ought to just know it. They ought to just be implementing this. Even craftsman level guys, journeyman level guys, they ought to be implementing this already.
well, this should be common sense, but we have, like
Should
we
be.
say, we've been around the block a few times, and
And
we don't see this we don't see this packaged up very often. And these are our opinions. These are our opinions based on what we see that has maximum impact in the work environment. And different people can bring different skills to the table and may need to make adjustments, but this is a good starting
this is
point.
a really good overview.
Yes.
This is a really good overview
So-
of like I said, this is a really good overview of skills and traits that, like, dude, you ought to have it down. But guess what? From our experience, not everybody has it down.
But these, like we were talking about a few minutes ago, these are things. It's easy to make a list.
Easy to figure
It's
it out.
easy to put it on a note card, and it's easy to implement it on a daily basis without any. You don't need anything else.
Nope. Pull out your free pen that you just got from the credit union. Pull out your 99-cent notepad and write down a list of things that, every day this is what I need to be focusing on every day. Starting out with willingness to learn, you know? And that goes into a lot of different areas. Messing around with my
Your microphone.
headphone here,
let's
but
hold
that
on
goes into a
before we-
lot of different areas.
Before you get into
But
that, Stephen, so the four that we're going to talk about, willingness to learn is number one. Number two is teamwork.
okay,
Number three is communication. And then dependability. So that's four little areas we're going to talk about. So willingness to learn.
so there's a lot of aspects to that, and so this is from kind of a field environment. We're focusing on the craftsman level, or say like a field supervisor level. No matter who you are in the field, no matter who you are in the office, no matter who you are in the business, there's always something to learn. You have to be willing to learn something, okay? Especially if you're an entry level individual, you have to be willing to understand that you don't know it all, right? And you get these guys show up on the job site like, "Well, I got it figured out." No, you don't have it figured out. You don't know. Maybe you had it figured out at the last job with the last architect that we were dealing with, but now we're on a different job, a different environment, and we have a different architect. Maybe we were working, maybe we were building a boat, okay? Like maybe we were building a 120-foot long dive support ship, okay, last year, and this year we're working on a drilling platform, that's 350 foot wide by 300 foot long. They're two different vessels. Maybe last month we were working on a chemical unit inside of a chemical plant, and this month we're working on a refinery. We're down in a refinery unit, or maybe this month we're at a school putting in, bleachers. Okay, everything's gonna change. The job environment's gonna change. the project's going to change, and what you were an expert at last year, you might be the novice at this year.
Yeah, and regulations change
Codes
and
change.
such too.
Yeah. And if you're not willing to keep up with that, regardless of your level, if you're not willing to keep up with the changes in the environment and the changes in the industry, you're going to get left behind.
Well, and also if you're working in the crafts fields, it's like sometimes you got to make changes depending on the environment that the market the changes that take place in the market. So if you spend 20 years working down in Sabine Pass, working in the shipyards, whether you're working on boats or drilling rigs, and you're just doing the same type of work all the time, and then all of a sudden all that work stops. That's been 20 years of your life, and all that work stops. And there's nothing coming down the horizon. You still got to feed your family. So you turn around and you go into refineries. Well, guess what, Bub? You just changed worlds.
The whole
I mean,
the whole job changed.
there's a lot of theory and there's a lot of application that stays the same, but there's also a lot of application. There's a lot of standards. There's a lot of processes and safety procedures that just completely changes on you.
Yeah.
So you have to have, like you said, you have to have a willingness to learn. You have to be adaptable. You have to be adaptable for one.
Yeah.
But also from the perspective of mentorship for the young kids, your younger people that are coming into the crafts and coming into the job site, willingness to learn is also just being hungry for knowledge and expressing that to your supervisors and to your coworkers. I'm not just here to get a paycheck. I'm also here to learn. And that being said, you don't want to be the annoying guy that's always, why? Because then you're going to drive these guys up the freaking wall, and they're not going to want to work with you. But you can ask intelligent questions throughout the process when the time is suitable. When everybody's bowed up on an activity, it's not the time to be asking, well, why are you doing that? And why are you doing that? And why are you doing this? And why are you doing that?
Yeah.
But when you have to have some social intelligence to gauge when is the appropriate time to ask these questions and say, hey, maybe we're taking a break. Maybe we're waiting on something. Maybe we're waiting on the forklift to bring us something. Maybe we're waiting on the supervisor to get here to line us out. And then maybe that's a good time to go over to that older journeyman or supervisor and say, I have a couple of questions. Can I ask you a couple of questions before we get started? Why are we mounting these cameras up here? Why are we doing this over here? Why are, and also look around and see if you understand just on your own why the certain things are happening or you don't. Because if you look around and say, well, that doesn't make sense to me, why didn't we just do this? This would have been easier. That's a good opportunity to go back to your supervisor or your journeyman that you're working with or whatever the case may be and say, why wouldn't we just do this? Obviously, we're doing this for a reason, but what's going on? What am I not seeing? And they're going to say, okay, yes, that's a good idea. That would work in other situations, but for this situation, we have X, Y, and Z that you don't know about. This is why. Oh, okay. So then you just learned something. So willingness to learn, and part of that, ask intelligent questions when it's suitable to ask those questions. Show some social intelligence.
Yeah, don't go asking, don't go trying to pick apart the project and asking questions right in the middle of a task that everybody's bowed up on,
Yeah, or bogged down a safety meeting with a million questions.
And and the other thing too is everybody. So here's something in the industry that everybody's here's something in life in general that right now everybody's like, well, there's no stupid question. It's like, well, actually, yeah, there is. Like, there are stupid questions out there. Like, there are times where, like, don't just ask questions just to be asking questions.
Right.
Like, there are times when, like, you can ask a question that you should have known that answer. Like, it was
Right.
obvious. And maybe, especially anybody that's in a training program, there might be questions that were in your training packets. So, okay,
Right.
if
Yep.
you ask me a question that was in your employee manual or it was in your training packet, then that's a dumb question. Cuz I'm going to think to myself, dude, bro, you didn't even look at the training material. You didn't look at the employee handbook. You didn't even read that chapter. You know, if we're teaching somebody theoretical knowledge in a classroom setting and you ask a question that was in your textbook under the required reading, then that was a dumb question. Bottom line, everybody's like, "Oh, there's no dumb questions." Like, no, that was a stupid question because you should have known that. So ask intelligent questions.
Yes.
Okay, don't ask questions just to ask questions just to think that you're showing some initiative. Ask intelligent questions.
Right.
Ask questions. Ask hard questions and look for answers.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know,
And
and
ask real
and
questions. Don't jump up in a meeting to raise your hand to ask a question just so
just to
you
hear
can be heard.
yourself. Yeah, just to
No.
hear yourself ask
But
a question.
if you have a valid question, but here's the other thing too. If you have a valid question, don't be afraid to ask.
No, absolutely. Just make sure that you've done your research.
Yeah.
I mean, your question might have been answered by 15 minutes worth of reading the manual.
Right.
So, and that leads into asking intelligent questions and asking them when they're suitable. Watch people, man. You can learn a lot, especially the more and this is kind of a message for the younger apprentice level, helper level employee, but as you gain experience in any industry, you're going to gain knowledge, and the more you watch the people that are the more senior people around you that are working, the more you watch them, the more you're going to pick up on the little nuances of the trade that is going to help you in your career. So watch people, watch what they're doing, watch how they do something, watch how they complete a task, and that's going to help you figure out how to be more efficient and how to be better at your job. So
Yeah.
watch
Yeah.
watch
And there's
people.
because if you take it from a practical application, like working as we did many years ago, working as electricians, working our tools as electricians. If you're standing there as an apprentice or a helper and you're working with a journeyman or a technician and you're watching what they're doing, you can learn a lot by paying attention of the years of experience that are in front of you, showing you how to do something that can save you a lot of hassle. How you position certain tools when you're using them, how you're manipulating certain pieces of cable or equipment. There's nuances to the positioning and everything that can make your life easier and make you more efficient. And watch the other people. If you're working with somebody and supporting them, watch them and try to anticipate them within reason. Don't get too crazy, but within reason. If you're working with somebody and they're working at heights or they're working over on one side or another, and maybe they're bolting something together and you're assisting them by handing them material. Okay, bolts, washers, lock washers, nuts. Okay, so put your brain into gear. If you handed them a bolt, maybe grab some washers next and be ready. So when they need the washers, you can hand them the washers. When they need the nut, you can hand them the nut. Think about what's coming next and be prepared and help feed that to them, and it helps their job go faster. It helps you support them, and that's more value that you're bringing to the table. Also, watch what's going on around you. Be aware of your surroundings from a perspective of safety and a perspective of just general watching out for your partners.
Just general
on the job.
awareness.
That's right.
General awareness.
Yes, and watching each other's back.
Right. Yeah.
Because when we're on the job sites, we are a team. We should be functioning as a team, and we should be watching out for each other. And especially, we talked about this some, and we're going to talk about it a lot more in the future. But you and I have a lot of offshore experience, and I still am heavily involved in the offshore world. When you're out there, it does. I mean, we have to be a team, even if we've never seen each other before in our lives. We have to conduct ourselves as a team because we are all that we have. When you're in an offshore facility and you're 2 hours offshore from land by helicopter, so if something goes wrong, we have to watch out for each other. If there's an emergency and that whole platform blows up, we have each other. So watch out for each other. Be aware of your surroundings.
And all right, so also communication. It's a big one. This is a really big one. Doesn't seem like it should be so important, but it is incredibly important, especially in the construction environment. One of the best. All right. One of the best examples I've got of expectation. Okay, and setting a job up was I went to work for a superintendent. This was the first day. This was the first day I worked with this superintendent. This superintendent in particular. Okay, and we'd been on this job for a few weeks, and maybe a few months, the way I remember it. And this particular superintendent had just come to the job, and I was sent to work for him, okay, this particular day. And there was a task and this was on a rig in Sabine Pass, and there was lighting. We were setting up a lighting circuit
Right.
underneath the heliport. So it was a short, simple lighting circuit. Okay, for anybody, the light fixtures were already set. I think all the junction boxes and everything were all set, and all I had to do was I had to run all of the electrical cable. Okay, I was running electrical cable. I was fastening it down to the side of the structure. I was tying it into the junction boxes. Like, that was it. Like, it was all real simple. But this particular superintendent, he laid the whole job out for me when I got there. That first thing in the morning, he said, "Look, this is what I want you to do. I want you to run this cable from, point A to point B to point C to point D to point F. I want you to split off and go to point H and point, And he said, I want you to band it down to the structure. I want you to fasten it to the structure a certain way. This is the cable we're using. This is the fastening material we're using. This is everything that you need to do the job. And this is exactly what I want, exactly how I want it done." And I said, "Okay, yes, sir." And he said, "And this is about how long I expect it to take." And he walked off. And I said, "Okay." And I went to work. And, I didn't necessarily bust my ass. I didn't necessarily work super, super hard. I didn't kill myself. I just worked diligently. I just did my job. I worked, I, and I used all the material that was provided, and I got done right about the time he expected me to be done. Like he was like, I expect this to be a 8-hour task, and he came back about 8 hours later, and I was wrapping everything up, and he was, and so specifying what you want from a leadership standpoint, specifying what you want done, and specifying how you want it done, and specifying what you want to be used to accomplish that task is incredibly important. And then from the from the subordinate side of that, listening to what's expected of you, performing the task per the instructions, per the material provided, in the time frame that was allowed is incredibly important. And
And whichever side you are on that equation, you need to make sure that you're actively getting the information that you need. If you're the if you're the journeyman, the craftsman, and the supervisor's here, I need you to go do this job. You need to step up and say, okay, tell me what you want me to do. Explain to me the expectations. You just want me just to go and do it and take care of it, or do you want it done a certain way? Do you want it done a specific way? What are your expectations? So that what I do is, it meets meets what you need for this project. So understanding your task, understanding your expectations are very important, and also, uh, and that goes all the way up the food chain into, well, there's no real stop on that. I mean, you could be a CEO of the company, and maybe you have shareholders and a board of directors. You need to understand what their expectations are. You need to understand what they want, as far as tasks to be completed. It's the same thing. You're going to have a task list as a CEO, just like you're going to have a task list when you're a journeyman electrician or a journeyman plumber or even an apprentice or a helper. Uh, you're just maybe wearing a different set of clothes, and
yeah,
maybe your tasks are going to be a little bit different, but you're still going to have tasks to be completed. You're going to have people that you're reporting to, and you're having to manage expectations either with other people in the company and also with the client.
yeah,
And there's a lot that you have to deal with too. Even as a helper, you may be interacting with the client, so you have expectations to manage on that way on that side as well.
yeah. And one thing to think about is your your feedback that you give, because there's gonna be times like you gotta be honest. You gotta be honest, and there's gonna be times when say your supervision is asking you, where are you at on this task, where are you at on this job, where are you at on this particular project, and you got to be honest about this is the honest truth of where I'm at on this particular project, this particular task. I'm at 40% completion. I'm at 60% completion. I'm at 100% completion. I'm waiting on material. I'm waiting on manpower. I'm waiting on somebody to tell me exactly how they want to lay it out. I'm waiting on direction. Whatever it is, that all falls into the communication spectrum as well, and you have to stop and you have to say honestly, truthfully, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm doing. Uh, I've been held up for a day because of so and so. I've been held up for a day because I've been waiting on material from a vendor, and the material's on back order, and that's what we're waiting on. Or I'm waiting on another craft to get out of my way, so I went over and worked on this other different project for a day because there's another craft that's in my way, whatever it
Absolutely.
is. But if you communicate through that and talk honestly with, you know, whoever your supervision is, and explain what your holdups are, or where you know it, you got to communicate. You got to be open with the communication, and from the very top down.
Yes.
I mean, like, the project manager has to communicate with the client. Client has to communicate with the project manager. Project manager has to communicate with the foreman. Foreman has to communicate with the journeyman. Journeyman has to communicate with the apprentice, and on and on and on.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the
Absolutely.
apprentice has to say, hey, yeah, I got that task finished. That's done. And the journeyman has to be able to transfer that up the food chain, so that everybody knows on the project team. Everybody knows what's done, what isn't done, and they can move on. I mean, it's
And
very important.
it's very important to be accurate. I mean, because if you're diligent, these are other things we've talked about. If you're showing up, if you're putting in a good day's work, you don't have to be killing yourself, but if you're putting in a good day's work and you're being diligent with your tasks and you're trying to move forward, yes, there's going to be days where you don't get done as much as maybe you want to get done, but you have to be accurate with your communication to your supervisors or to your other people that you're dealing with on the job site regarding where you actually are. And if you get to stumbling blocks, or you find out that you're missing things, or you need need more information, or you need more material, or you need more supplies, or you're missing equipment, or whatever, you need to communicate those things effectively and as soon as possible, and you need to be as accurate as possible with your communication, because there's so many other pieces in play. And as you start off in these trades, or even if you've worked in these trades for a long time, there may be things that you don't realize or that you don't understand until you have the opportunity to get into a managerial position, or as a project lead, or a superintendent, or a project manager, and then you get exposed to an entire different world of schedules and budgets and man hours and the deals that project managers make with each other. Because you have, what was it? We were doing some projects in Sabine, and the project manager, we were going to lunch one day, and we were talking about hooking up welding machines. So the shipyard, the guys with the shipyard, they had all the welders and fitters on their side. So obviously they needed all the welding machines. They were their welding machines. But we were the electricians. These are electric welding machines. We were the ones that hooked up all the temporary power across the rig during this construction project, and we hooked up all the welding machines. And the point that was driven home to me was like, you may think it was no big deal that you took 15 minutes out of your day, or even 30 minutes out of your day, to run some temporary cable and hook up a big 8-pack welding machine. To you, as the worker, that may not seem like a big deal. And you're right. It's not a big deal by itself. But when you add up the fact that over the course of the project, we got 3 different rigs lined up here, and we probably got 68 packs and numerous other smaller welding machines scattered about. And you start adding up 30 minutes per 8-pack, probably moving them each at least 2, maybe 3 times throughout the course of a 6-month period of time, and multiply that by how many personnel it takes to do that. Now you're talking a sizable amount of time. Now you're talking about actual resources actually being utilized at a substantial amount. And then that can be used on a political level between the project managers to say, hey, I need a little bit of help from you guys from this side. We're helping you out over here. There's concessions that can be made, and there's deals that can be struck helping each other out, but there's got to be some give and take. and you have to communicate what's going on so that your supervision, your project management can track things and can be informed. Also, another problem that we had, one of our superintendents we worked for years ago complained about the fact that people would come in and he's sitting there planning the job. He's trying to order material. He's trying to track progress. He's trying to go to meetings and report on things. And he asks you, Stephen, where are you at? You're working on the ESD system. Where are you at on it? And he needs to know accurate information from you because he don't have time to go down there and walk it down. You're working on it. You should know where you're at. If you say you're at 95% and you'll be done in 2 days, that's what he's going to put down on his tracking sheet. Well, if you're actually at 50% because you've been screwing off for the last 3 weeks, that's a problem. Because at the end of 2 days, guess what he's going to do? He's going to give you another job to go do because he's going to think you're done. And if you're not done, then that presents a problem. So you have to be accurate and you have to be diligent, and all this stuff comes together and plays together.
Yeah, when you're communicating, it needs to be correct, needs to be accurate, needs to be honest. Another soft skill to really harp on is, and this is one of those deals. This should be a no-brainer. Unfortunately, it's not a no-brainer, but it really should be. Unfortunately, we fight with this just as much as any other trait. But dependability, like so they say there's a saying, showing up, what do they say? Showing up's,
Showing up as 80% of it.
80% of success is just showing up. It's like, man, I disagree. 80% of success is showing up on time, where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there, with who you're supposed to be with. So it's like this is something that, we kind of harp on in the sense that, like, you should know that if your workday starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, or your workday starts at 6 o'clock in the morning, that's when you go to work. You show up. If you're 5 minutes early, you're late, right? If you're 5 minutes early, you're late. So show up on time. Show up ahead of schedule. Get your job. Be on the job. Be ready to go. Be ready to work. That doesn't mean, oh, well, I showed up right at 6 o'clock, but then I went into the break room and I spent 15 minutes making coffee. Like, no, man, if you want coffee, like, you better show up 20 minutes early and make your damn coffee before it's time to go to work. Like, show up on time, show up in the right place. Like, in our experience, in the offshore environment, if you show up, you might be catching a crew boat to a rig at 2 o'clock in the morning, or you might be catching a helicopter out to a rig at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. And if you're late, they're gonna leave you.
Yes, they will. They will not wait for you.
If you're late, dude, if you're late and you're not checked in and your bags aren't checked and you're not weighed in for, like, say, for a helicopter ride, if you show up and you're not weighed in and your bags aren't weighed and you're not checked and in the middle of this coronavirus stuff, if your health inspection is not done and you're not ready to go, they'll leave you.
Absolutely, they will.
If you don't show up on the dock with your luggage and you're ready to jump on that crew boat and take off, they'll leave you. They'll go.
That's right.
Because they have a job to do as well, and they'll be gone, and you'll be sitting there on either at the heliport or at the dock, whatever it is, and you'll be trying to figure out how you're supposed to get to work, and the ship has quite literally, the ship has sailed.
Yes.
And vice versa. if you're on the rig, if you're offshore, if you're 200 miles offshore and you're asleep in your bunk and it's your turn to get on the boat and go home, or it's your turn to get on the helicopter and go home, and you're not sitting there in the lobby waiting to go, guess what? Helicopter's leaving.
They will leave you.
There's
Yes.
and you're stuck. So it's like guys are like, oh well, I'm running a few minutes late, and I'll just, and that goes back to communication too. It's like, well, hey, okay, say you're working a job and you're running 15 minutes late. Call your boss. The second you know you're gonna be late, call your boss and say, hey man, I had a flat tire. I overslept my alarm.
Don't wait till 6 o'clock.
Don't wait till the time you're supposed to be there. Call him 30 minutes
Yes.
out when you
Yeah.
know you're late and
That's
say,
right.
"Hey man, I'm running late. I'm not going to be there right on time. I'm running 15 minutes late. I'm running 20 minutes late. Whatever it is." Like that's going to help a lot more than all of a sudden waiting until, like, for instance, say you go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, which a lot of people go to work at 6 o'clock. Say you go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, okay? If you wait until 6:01 to call me and tell me that you're late, I'm gonna be pretty pissed. I'm gonna be pretty aggravated. But if you call me at 5:40 in the morning and give me a 20-minute heads up that, hey man, I got a flat tire, I'm changing it right now, I'm gonna be a little late. But you call me at 5:40 in the morning, then okay, now I have time to plan for my day. Now I know that you're not going to be there on time. I know you're not going to be there at 6. That helps me figure it out. That helps me plan the day. That helps me get ready. That's a heck of a lot better than me sitting there at 6:01 wondering where the heck are my guys at.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay? And then it just helps the whole and that's communication and dependability all summed up in one thing. Communicate with people on what's going on, be dependable, show up when you're supposed to be there, do what you're supposed to do while you're there, okay, and be able to be somebody. You gotta be able to. I gotta be able to leave you alone.
Yes.
Be diligent. Work diligently. I got to be able to leave you alone and let you perform a task while I go off and perform another task on the other side of the job site and not wonder, like, dude, is that guy doing his job?
Yeah.
Because everybody's like, oh, well, just, 80, showing up's 80% of success. I was like, no, showing up and doing your job is what gets you success. So yeah, okay, 80% is just showing up on time. Okay, cool. The other 20, it's like you gotta do something.
Yes. You got to be dependable because a lot of times you got people that have a lot of experience, but they have to stack them 2 or 3 deep on different jobs, and even you can't depend on them to be making forward progress without having somebody right there supervising every little bit. So if you can be a self-starter, if you can be self-motivated, if you can do a job by yourself and the supervisor come check on you an hour or two later and you have made noticeable progress and you're plowing forward, whether or not he's standing behind you or not, you're bringing value to the table in spades that you have no idea how much value you're bringing to the table. So that's tremendously important. Be where you're supposed to be. Do what you're supposed to do.
When you're supposed to be doing it.
And this also is about having the right state of mind. What is your state of mind? If you're showing up, if you're being able to show up on time and you're being able to work throughout the day, but your mind is not in a good state of mind because you're staying out at the bar too late, or you're staying up playing video games too long, or you're staying up, or maybe if you have kids or something and the kids are keeping you up late. If that is not conducive to you being in a good state of mind, to be not only to be alert and to be productive and to be forward thinking and proactive while you're at work. But it's also a safety aspect as well. You need to be in a right state of mind. You need to be dependable in that respect as well. Being in the right state of mind, being in a safe state of mind for the job. So that's important to keep in mind as well. Did we need to rally back over here to the teamwork section? Was there anything we missed on this teamwork section? I was looking at our list here. As far as teamwork, work diligently. So we talked some about being dependable as far as working by yourself. You also need to be dependable as far as being a member of a team. There's going to be many times that you're going to have to work with a team, and maybe you're going to have to work with people you don't necessarily really like too much, or maybe you don't get along with.
Yeah, but you got to make it happen.
But you're being paid to be there, and you're being paid to do a job, and you need to put that crap aside, and you need to try to be as productive together as you possibly can. And you need to step up and help where needed. You need to be, if you're doing a group task, or even just generally on the job site, if you're, going from one place to another or dealing with something, keep your eyes out. That's part of your awareness. See if somebody needs help with something. Maybe somebody's struggling. Maybe somebody's trying to move a piece of equipment, or they're trying to stage something, or they're trying to do a task and they're struggling. Don't be afraid to step up and help them, whether or not they're, be careful that you don't put yourself in the line.
Still having some technical difficulties, but the thing is though, we were at teamwork. We were at teamwork.
Sorry about that, guys.
Dealing with teamwork. All right, we had a microphone. We're learning here. Luckily, Steven didn't fat finger anything on the. He instead he kicked it. So he fat footed something, and our recording equipment went haywire. But I mean, we're talking about teamwork. In the industrial environment, you gotta, we constantly say you gotta be your brother's keeper, and you gotta be watching out for each other. On a job site, for instance, right now we're in the middle of summer. It's hot as hell in Southeast Texas, and you got to be watching out for each other when you're on the job site, making sure people are staying hydrated, making sure somebody's not getting overheated. In the wintertime, you got to make sure somebody's not getting too cold if you're working outside. You got to make sure somebody, if they need help, you help them. Be a part of a team. Don't keep up with what people need. Try to help where you're needed. Try to find out where you're needed. And don't worry so much about taking credit for every little damn thing that you do. Just get in there and do something. Get in there and help. Get in there and do your job. Everybody's got a job to do. Don't go in there and try to focus on your job. Don't go in there and just try to do every little thing. Go in there and focus on your job. Focus on what you're responsible for. Do that well, and then if you have time left over, help somebody else.
Absolutely.
Don't do somebody else's job until your job is done. When your job is done, you got some extra time, then turn around, try to help somebody else out with their job.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground. I don't know how long we've been talking. Over an hour, I think it's been, but we've covered a lot of ground. Soft skills, personality traits, and we've kind of been all over the map here a little bit, but
yeah,
it really comes down to 4 main points, and that's willingness to learn
something,
teamwork, communication, and dependability. So those are some major points that anybody, whether they are just coming into the industry or just coming into any industry or any market, or if they've been there for a while, or even if it doesn't matter, even if you're a CEO or you're a president of a company, you can bring those same soft skills, those same personality traits. You can bring those to bear. They're going to serve everybody very well.
So here's an interesting thing to leave it with is willingness to learn. And when we were working in the offshore environment doing electrical work, I started to realize that I was lacking in theoretical knowledge. Like I was essentially an installer. Like I knew how to install systems, but I didn't know what those systems were doing. I knew how to install electrical panels and circuits, but I didn't know how to troubleshoot those circuits after they were installed or if they were old. And one of the really important things that especially entry level people need to understand is that there are plenty of avenues for education out there. For instance, when we were working in Galveston, uh, I reached out and I just Googled it. I found it online and I reached out and I found a uh, classes in Houston to learn electrical theory. You know, and once I then after we got done with the after I got done working in the offshore environment, I ended up going back to college for instrumentation. And since then, any industry I've ever gone into, any aspect that I've worked in construction, there's there's always a book out there. There's always an article, a book, a website, a study, a paper, something that you can access to further your knowledge. So when we say willingness to learn, like you got to be willing to search out avenues where you can improve your knowledge in your craft.
And this is the age of the internet.
It's
I mean, we have
so
phones.
much information at the tip of your fingers.
We have phones that are more powerful than computers that we had 10 and 15 years ago when we
Yeah.
got started in this industry. We have
Yeah.
all this on our phones, not to mention what you have access to on your computers or your tablets. So
There's no excuse.
there's no excuse.
There's
There's a tremendous amount of information that can be learned
no
for
excuse.
free.
There's no excuse to not be expanding your knowledge in your field.
Absolutely.
So when we say willingness to learn, like what I tell people, what I tell the younger guys is like, hey man, when you have a break, I know you're sitting in the truck looking at your phone, looking at Facebook. You could be looking at your phone, looking at a YouTube video of how to perform the task that you're supposed to be performing that day. Like say
Absolutely.
if you're laying concrete, maybe you should be looking at a video on concrete laying, or looking at a video on how to connect electrical circuits, or looking at a video on how to hang drywall, or how to unplug sewer lines. And it's like, dude, it's all the information is there. It's online. Dig into it. When we say willingness to learn, it's like, dude, you better have your head buried in information.
Absolutely.
There's no excuse to not know.
Absolutely. And it is more convenient now than it ever has been.
Than it's ever been.
Ever been. So, I mean, the YouTube videos is a perfect example. Is absolute perfect example, because you could be sitting there as a helper, and the boss could be telling you, we're going to work the next 2 or 3 days running underground conduit for the incoming service, the primary service for this building. You can be sitting there on your break, and you could be pulling up NEC videos or Mike Holt videos or something like that, where they can be explaining, this is how you do it. this is why you do it. You know, this is why you have your trenches this deep. This is why you're using this type of conduit. They can be laying all that out. And you can come out of that period of time with a tremendous amount of knowledge ingrained, because you're learning it on the videos and you're actually doing it yourself, hands on. This is a golden opportunity for people to excel. All you have to do is just apply yourself.
That's it.
Well, good deal. Well, that's been a pretty good talk today. I think we've covered quite a bit. Anything else you want to close it out, Mr. Maxwell?
Close it. Y'all go out and learn something. Y'all go out and learn something. Y'all go out and get on find a team and get on it and work with it and communicate with said team, and y'all learn something and be dependable. God damn it.
All right. Thank you very much. Talk to y'all next time.